Am I a sociopath because I didn't feel anything when my dad passed away? You pre-grieved. It's impossible to tell without a ton more context and some insight into who you are as a person, i.e., a lot more than a few short paragraphs. If this is something that's concerning you, then please talk to a doctor. A lot of folk are built to do in these moments and have their feelings later. I'm definitely one of these people. A disaster will hit and I'll do what needs done. Then maybe 4 months later I'll have a crying panic attack meltdown about it. As long as you have ways of processing your emotions safely and positively, then be how you need to be. I DK, but there is a high chance I'd find it endearing that my kid sat with me, my body, and both spent time with me by self-regulating and eating by me. Those are two things, coping and eating, that serve to strengthen you, literally help you grow and get nutrients and ensure you'll be just fine without me. Which is all I want as a parent. Now if my kid was aiming spitballs at my face and trying to bounce crumpled paper basketballs off my body into the trash can, maybe I'd be pissed. People deal with grief differently. Do I think it's fairly odd that you were comfortable watching TV and eating pizza with his body in view? Yes. No, I don't think so. It wasn't sudden. You knew it was coming. If you were like me, you had already come to terms with it. Maybe even had your grieving done already while you made the most of the time you had. Maybe it'll hit you later and maybe it won't. Personally, as much as I loved my dad, I was relieved he wasn't suffering anymore. I felt horrible about it, but I even made a few jokes about it. I think he'd have liked them too. People deal with death in different ways. I wouldn't worry too much about it. The EMTs just leave the body? What if you just went home and didn't do anything? Is this really the norm? Only a professional can diagnose you with that disorder. That's rude to call you that. People deal with emotions differently. I mean, I'm in a similar situation. My dad is old, and he's in and out of the hospital constantly. Sure, it breaks my heart to know he's suffering. But just because I don't show it physically doesn't mean I don't care. I just care in my own way. If anything, you might just be neurodivergent. Just like everyone's fingerprints are unique, our brains also have different ways of processing information. Some people might find it easier to focus on specific tasks, while others may struggle with certain social interactions. These differences are what make us unique and diverse. Being neurodivergent doesn't mean there's something wrong with a person. It's just a different way their brain is wired. What exactly would she consider a normal reaction? To have you be a complete and utter mess with no way to know how to move on from this? Just constantly in your room playing sad songs and crying 'cause your dad's gone? Wouldn't your dad be happy that his death didn't cause you pain and instead you just moved on with your life? Simply, have you ever felt truly sad about anything prior to this? If so, there's a good chance you're not a sociopath. As someone who has been in a similar situation of having to wait for the mortuary to pick up their parent's body, you're not a sociopath. Probably. I don't think you can answer this question unless you've been through it. Because the feelings you feel are really weird. Gets to a point where it's like, well, this is the situation. You just do what you gotta do. Coordinate what you have to coordinate. The grieving always comes later, when you're in a physical and mental state to handle it. Brain kind of shuts some parts down. In a sense. Not really, but I'm sure you understand. Sometimes people are in shock. You haven't seen his body and it doesn't even seem real. You don't know what to do. Sometimes you have grieved someone because you know they were declining. Did you go to the funeral? How did you feel then? Did you feel any sadness? No, or at least not necessarily. Emotional processing is very different from person to person. It could just not be really hitting just yet. Took me a week after my dog died until I reacted to it in any discernible way. Losing a parent is a pretty big change, and it sounds like you were the only one who was taking responsibility for the situation, so you had to be available and in control to deal with what was going on. That's an emotional survival thing sometimes, especially if you grew up with any neglect or abandonment experiences. Those with a background of neglect or abandonment also often, though not always, tend to find partners who are also emotionally unavailable or unsupportive. I think you should take a look at your partner's reaction and seriously ask yourself if she's being supportively worried about you or trying to judge or shame you for the way that you are. However, even if you are a sociopath, that doesn't make you a bad person or any less than you are now in your own estimation. The spectrum of the human experience is broad, but all of it is valid and worthy of dignity and compassion. No, because a sociopath wouldn't care that they were having little to no emotions. Everyone grieves in their own way. It can take time for it to sink in. I've been taking care of my dad for 10 years. I am prepared and ready for the day he croaks. You're not a sociopath. You were prepared for it. Last time I checked, Father Time is still undefeated. Getting things done, calling the mortuary, and not feeling any emotions seems fairly normal. The numbness and shock can do that. Eating fast food and watching TV while your dad's corpse is right there does strike me as sociopathic behavior. I'm afraid. I hope you're okay. Maybe it'll hit you some months down the line. If not, it does seem a shame that a man's kid was not even upset that he died. Maybe you were in shock? Or maybe it was something you expected, so it didn't hit you right away. The eating in front of the body is a bit weird, but then again, I've met people who aren't really fazed by stuff like that. One situation won't determine whether you're a sociopath or not. I feel like your GF was just expecting you to act like she would have acted. Emotions are weird, especially when something traumatic happens. Grief looks different for everyone, and not everyone has or shows the same reaction. It's likely you'll feel more at a different time. Hard to say though without knowing more about you and your relationship with your dad. Even if you are, you're still the same person. So does it matter at all? This is not enough information about you for anyone to answer this question. Also, having psychopathy doesn't make you automatically a bad person. You can have cognitive empathy even if you don't have emotional empathy. Everyone grieves differently. I'm not a professional, but my brother was my best friend, and when he passed away unexpectedly, I cried the day of and didn't cry for months after. I also didn't want up to the casket, and if I had the chance to again, I still wouldn't. I was numb. I truly do not remember the first 6 months after he passed. Now I have days I cry and talk to him, and other days I just don't think about it. I didn't know he was gonna pass, so there is that, and he was also 27. Same age I am now. However, reading that you already knew the day was coming, maybe you had already been mentally preparing yourself subconsciously, and that's why it didn't impact you as much as she would expect. And who's to say you won't break down in months or years to come? It's a lot to take one. The realization of death and then actually having it happen in front of you is a lot. I don't think you're crazy for eating and not having a sad reaction. Grief doesn't equal crying. Death is something we learn to live with and is something that is natural. Do you have other feelings? Does anything make you sad?
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Haircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.